Good evening. We are starting chapter 13 of Tanya, and this continues the theme of Beinoni. The theme of Beinoni that is really the heart of Tanya, is about defining the Beinoni, because the Alter Rebbe felt that the Beinoni is relevant to each one of us. Because the Beinoni does everything that's right, and yet he has to struggle. He's working on himself, he's a work in progress. He may never succeed to successfully become a tzaddik, and that's what makes him interesting and relevant, because all of us have that inner struggle, and we're all trying to understand ourselves. And the Tanya is a psychological analysis of the Beinoni, and of course Torah advice, Hasidus advice for how he can go on and be successful in his daily struggles and find a balance and peace in his life. Now, in the first chapter of Tanya, he brought all of the sources in the Talmudic literature about what is a Beinoni. Also from Zohar, what is a Beinoni. And over there was clear that if you look in the Gemara, there are three personalities. There's the tzaddik, there's the rasha, and the Beinoni. Conventional understanding of these three was that the tzaddik is the righteous, the rasha is the sinner, and the Beinoni is in the middle. Now, why is he in the middle? Because he does some good, he does some bad, and he's not, someone who does more bad than good, so therefore he's in the middle. But the Alter Rebbe in the first chapter said that you can't say that. Because if you say that he is someone that sins, and he sometimes does good, sometimes does bad, that's what makes him a Beinoni, in the middle or average, however you want to define the Beinoni. That's not so, because if someone who sins and half of his life is sinning and half of his doings is wrong, half and half is not a very good odds. And in that discussion he brought a Gemara. The Gemara said, Tzadikim Yetzer Tov Shafta. The tzaddik, his good inclination is the one who guides him. The rasha Yetzer Hara Shaftim, is his evil inclination guides him. Beinoni Zeh v'Zeh Shaftan. Both of them guide him. So here you can still argue, well, he's both. So sometimes he listens to his Yetzer Tov, sometimes he listens to his Yetzer Hara. So it's a regular guy. He has his good days and his bad days. But then the Gemara continues that this discussion was in the Beis HaMedrash of Rabbah, who Rabbah in the era of the Gemara, he was one of the heads of the yeshiva, of the main yeshiva, or the spiritual leader of Juri, in the main population center of Yiddishkeit, qualitatively and quantitatively. And Rabbah was discussing this, what's a tzaddik, what's a rasha, what's a Beinoni. And after they said, well, a Beinoni is someone who's Zeh v'Zeh Shaftan, who has both influences, Rabbah said, Kagoina no Beinoni. I'm a Beinoni. Now, what did Rabbah mean by that, saying, I'm a Beinoni? Now, we understand Rabbah was humble. But if a Beinoni is a guy who one day sins and one day does right, one day does wrong, then Rabbah is not being honest, and he's not teaching what a Beinoni is. Rabbah was a Torah teacher, so he had to tell them the truth. And they're discussing categorizations that are in Torah. So the Torah categorizes one a tzaddik, categorizes another a Beinoni, categorizes a third person a rasha, and Rabbah is trying to teach by saying that I'm a Beinoni, that's not the way to teach it. If a Beinoni is someone who sins half of the time and does good half of the time, then he's not teaching them the right thing. Because they know that Rabbah is constantly learning Torah, constantly studying. He's a leader of the Jewish people. He's totally dedicated to doing the right thing. They never see him doing anything besides studying Torah, till the Gemara says that at the day when he was supposed to die, the Malach HaMoves, the angel of death, couldn't take him because the angel of death can't touch anyone while they're learning Torah, and he was constantly learning Torah. So how could he portray himself to be a Beinoni even if he wants to be humble? And the truth is that humility can't be false. You can't lie for humility. Someone who's humble, he knows his qualities, and yet he is humble. And there's a whole discussion about that. But the point over here is, certainly, presenting yourself wrongly in a setting of teaching would be wrong for Rabbah to say that. And in fact, Abaya said to Rabbah that if you're a Beinoni, no one else, what are the rest of us? Okay, so we're going to discuss what Rabbah said and what Abaya said. But right now, what does it mean, what is a Beinoni? When it said, the Beinoni is influenced by both. Now, we already set the standard that a Beinoni on the outside, in practice, his behavior is the behavior of a tzaddik. That the Beinoni does right all the time. What differentiates the Beinoni from the Rasha is the inner struggle. So he has an inner struggle, and he has impulses, and therefore his animal soul and his Yetzer Hara still are very active, sending in him impulses that are materialistic and perhaps even animalistic and so on. So therefore, with this we're going to analyze and respond to the original question in the first chapter of Tanya. So Perik Yud Gimel, B'zeh Yuvin Lo Shemayim Razal, Bein Nizev Zeh Shreiftim. And with what was discussed, we're now going to address what is said, what the Gemara says, that by Beinoni Zev Zeh Shreiftim, Pirish Yetzer Tov Yetzer Hara, both of them influence him. But the Alter Rebbe is going to point out, let's take the word. Yeah, when you study Gemara, like you have to look at the words and translate them accurately, because a change in a nuance can make a difference in the meaning of it, and it could snowball into a misunderstanding of what's going on. So here the Gemara uses the word shoiftan. The Beinoni, the animal soul and the godly soul, judge them. So it doesn't say influence them. It doesn't say rule them. It says by the Beinoni, the two inclinations judge them. And from here he's going to go into a whole discussion of when do we use the word rules them or judges them, and make a distinction between judges and rulers, between someone who is ruled by both impulses and someone who is judged by both impulses, and how this is going to give us a better understanding of the Beinoni. And to get into that discussion, he begins with a verse in Tehillim. The Ksiv, it's written, Ki yamoid li min evyoin lo yishia mishoifte nafshi. It says in Tehillim that Hashem stands by the right side of the pauper, the poor person, to save him from the judges of his soul. So, yes, it's true, Hashem stands by the right side of the pauper, because if the poor person doesn't have some special protection, everyone is going to step on him, make a rag out of him. But the way the pasuk, this is understood in Tehillim, is that he stands by the person who is poor spiritually, to save him from the judges of his soul. Now, what are the judges of his soul? Now, if it's a poor person, literally, the judges of his soul are not really going to, is not connected with his poverty. Unless it's saying to Shaifte Nafshe, those who judge him negatively, Nafshe, not his soul, Nafshe, his persona. But the way the Alter Rebbe translated over here in Tanya, it means the judges in his soul. They are judges in his soul. And the Hashem stands by the right side of this poor person who is poor spiritually, who's still struggling within himself, to save him from the judges that he has, his inner judges. A new term, analogy for the inclinations. And he points out, it says the judges that is in him. And going back to the original term of the Gemara, that says, by a tzaddik, there's one judge. By the Rasha, there's also one judge. The evil, there's a judge. By the Beinoni, two judges. It doesn't say two rulers. It doesn't say he's ruled by both inclinations. What's the difference between someone who rules and someone who judges? If someone does good today and does evil tomorrow, he's being ruled by those impulses. He doesn't say the impulses rule him. If we follow impulses, then we're ruled by them. People who are not in control, they say, I can't control myself. What does it mean when a person says, I can't control himself? That means he's ruled by something that's outside of his control. He's saying that as if he's possessed by some evil force, so he lost himself to his inclinations, so his Yetzer Hara. Then he would be ruled by his Yetzer Hara. So that's why every other day he's doing evil. And some days he does good because he's ruled by his godly soul. So he's not here as if. So the Alter Rebbe says, it doesn't say in the Gemara that the Beinoni is ruled by two impulses. It says he's judged. What's the difference between a judge and a ruler? So he says, well, let's look at where does a judge do what judges do. It's in the courtroom. Now, in a Beis Din, there are three judges. A Beis Din, there always has to be three judges. And the three judges listen to the two principals, the two parties, present their case, and then the judges debate between themselves who is innocent and who is guilty. So it's what's going on in a Beis Din is the judges debating between themselves. And that's how he explains it. You can't say over here that the two inclinations rule them, because if he's being ruled, even partially, even in partnership, even every other day, if he's being ruled by his Yetzer Hara, then he's a Rasha. And we discussed already in chapter 12, and the argument started being presented even in chapter 1, that a Beinoni never sins. He's not a man to sin. He's struggling, but he always clinches it. He stays in control. So the Beinoni is in control. So certainly a Beinoni cannot be someone who one day he follows and is ruled by his Yetzer Hara and the other by Yetzer Tov. And that's why he said that right in chapter 1. Rabbah thought he was a Beinoni. He actually thought he was a Beinoni because he also understood that a Beinoni is someone who doesn't sin. But Rabbah thought that he is just because he doesn't sin doesn't make him a tzaddik. Rabbah thought that he still has himself evil, that he's too busy learning, so it doesn't come to the fore. And we're going to be speaking about Rabbah later on more specifically. So therefore, it doesn't say in the Gemara that by the Beinoni both rule him, because by the Beinoni he is never ruled by his Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is a judge. He's like one judge in the courtroom of 3 judges, who one judge is giving his voice. Now, when the parties say their opinion of what happened, so the principals are presenting their argument. Any of the judges, can he take them seriously, not take them so partially seriously, and so on. When the judges are between themselves deciding what should be the decision, so before they come to the vote, before the Beis Din decides, at that point, the voices are heard. And one of the judges can present a very strong argument in one direction. He may sway the other judges in his direction, but maybe not. And more often than not, you have one dayan, one judge saying reasons why he's innocent, the other one is saying reasons why the man is guilty, and then it's up to the third judge to see which decision to make, or make some kind of a compromise, or take into consideration both, and he's the decider. And in fact, the Gemara says, and that's the halach and practice, sometimes they appoint one judge is appointed to think deeper into one side, the other judge is appointed he should think deeper into this side, and the third judge is the one who puts it all together. That's called a zablo in halacha. So, but concerning our situation, now we're redefining the role of the inclination. It's a voice. It could be a loud voice. It doesn't decide. It is heard. So that's why now we understand the exact term the Gemara uses, that by the Beinoni, the good inclination and the inclination are judges voicing their opinion before the decision is made, before the realization of what should happen is made. So therefore, one judge voices opinion, and nevertheless, the decision will not necessarily be that way. There's also another judge who disagrees with him. So now you have one judge to the right, one judge to the left, and there has to be a decision that sways in one direction. So therefore, this is the Beinoni. The Beinoni has voices in him. He hears voices. So when he hears a situation, there is a draw and an impulse for the materialistic and perhaps even the sinful. So that's a voice. And the Beinoni hears that. He hears that. He's aware, yes, I'm attracted to something that's not necessarily kosher. And he hears that and he senses it because it's a judge, it's a voice. It doesn't rule him. It's a judge. It's an opinion of his. It's one opinion in his complex personality. But there's also another side to him. It's a side, right? Like you have in a court, there's this side. There are the liberals. There's the liberal side of the court, and then there's the conservative side in the court. Here in the United States, in the Supreme Court, there's the conservative side, there's the liberal side, and the judges, and then they have to have a vote and make a decision. So we are always in judgment in ourselves, within ourselves, and voices are heard. and sensed, our emotions, our feelings, our mind. And there has to be a decision. So the Yetzer Hara by the Beinoni is just a voice. It's not a decider. We're soon going to see how the decision is made. It's going to be the words of the deciding judge that sways it in one way. And by the Beinoni, his inner judge, so to say, or his inner self, is going to sway in the direction of doing right. So it's not a unanimous court. It's never unanimous. It's tzaddik, it's unanimous. It's unanimous. There's no other voices in him. No struggle. The Beinoni, it's a hotly debated behind the scenes in the courtroom. You know, there's the minority opinion is very strongly heard. The minority opinion has a loud voice, but the decision is not in the minority opinion. So, let's go back into the details of this debate, the psychological details. He's now putting it in our psychology. The Alter Rebbe is taking it out of the courtroom, putting it in our psychology, inner battle. The Yetzer Hara voices his opinion with the feelings of the heart. Because we learned that the Yetzer Hara, the animal soul, is more in the heart. Instinct. The heart that pumps the blood, the heat in the body, so to say. The senses, the person's sensors, his sense for pleasure, his sense for pain. So these impulses are more with the heart. And the Beinoni's heart has a voice. His Yetzer Hara has a voice. He hears it, so he senses it. He senses his attractions, his impulses. And now from the tug in the heart towards the sensual, it goes to the head to think about it. Because the Nefesh HaBahamis also has the intelligence of the animal soul to think about it, how to get the desires, how to fulfill the desires of his heart, how to realize what he is attracted to. Now when it comes into the head, at the stage of the head, here the godly soul, its main place is in the head. So miyad chelakal of sheft hasheni shua lekiz shebemayach. Now when it gets into the head, here the debate starts. So there's an idea in my head now to follow the animal soul. So now the godly soul is voicing their opinion. And here's where the inner debate happens. The godly soul is saying that this is not appropriate. This is not appropriate for you. So the godly soul is voicing his opinion. And since the godly soul also influences the heart, so therefore it goes now, by the godly soul, goes from the heart, goes from the brain down to the heart. So the and that goes down to the place of his emotions of the godly soul. So the attraction usually starts to the physical, and the material starts in the heart. Because the heart is the heart of flesh and circulates the blood, and that gives strength to the senses and the impulses. But then it starts going into the debate, intellectual debate, but the mind also, the nefesh kiss also has an influence in the heart, and now here there is the tug of war between the two. And therefore we need we need something should be swayed in one direction. Now it's interesting over here. He's illustrating the Beinoni that really it's two judges are stuck. If you have a bezdin of two judges, Or sometimes in the Supreme Court here in our country, there was one judge died, they didn't put the other judge, a case came before them, so it was even. It was 4-4. And that could be a court that is frozen. They can't move. There's not swaying it. And it seems to be over here that that's this Beinoni, in this situation that we're talking about, that we're illustrating here in chapter 13, it's as if he's stuck. What happens if someone is equally attracted to yes or to sin or to good? What's going to happen? Mother says, do this, and father says, don't do this. And he loves mother and father equally. What's he going to do? He'll be frozen. What happens if you have a magnet of a certain amount of power, and you have a magnet opposite with the exact same amount of power, and an piece of iron in the middle? So you have to the right the same exact distance, same power that the magnet on the right has, same power the magnet on the left has, and if you just remove one magnet, it's going to go to the right. If you choose the other magnet, it's going to go to the left. And what happens if it's in the middle, and both have equal pull? What's going to happen? It's going to stay in the middle, because there's equal force on both sides. And that's what happens in a Beis Din when one judge says guilty, the other says innocent, and each one is giving their reasoning and their argumentation and showing their proofs. So now, what's going to happen? So you have to have the third machriya, the deciding judge. So he has to weigh both arguments, and he's going to say, listen, I hear you, but there's another point, or this is weak with your position, and he's going to, bottom line, decide, even if the other one's going to disagree with him. The deciding judge is going to go in one direction. So who's the decider over here if everyone is stuck? And here, chapter 13, he brings a new dynamic into the Beinoni personality. And that is, who is the Machriya? V'halacha k'divrei Machriya hu HaKadosh Baruch Hu ha'Oizroi. Hashem, who's helping the godly soul. He's helping his good inclination to do what's right. There's a Maimer Chazal, our sages tell us, that if not for the Yetzer Hara, for Hashem's help, we wouldn't be able to overcome the Yetzer Hara. We're living in a physical world, in a physical body, and if we wouldn't have Hashem's help, we wouldn't be able to get out of it. Which is an interesting concept. So therefore, there's Hashem giving that extra tug so that the good, the side of good shall prevail. And the godly soul should be the decider. The godly soul should decide because Hashem is helping him. So therefore, when it's in a balance, it's going to sway. And that's, who's being helped over here? The Beinoni. Now, so we really have to understand this. What does it mean the godly soul is helping him? So it could be that there's some help coming from Hashem, but then where's free choice? Which is an interesting question. But the word Oizroi means help. If someone is sitting by the side and saying, Hashem, you provide for me, that is not helping him. In the desert, Hashem didn't help them make a living. Hashem dumped man on the Jewish camp. So every morning, the Yid picked up his man, and he ate the man. So it's not that Hashem helped them make a living in the desert, feed their families. Hashem didn't help them feed their families. Hashem fed their families. When it says Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Oizrai, it means that someone is doing all he can, but he needs help. In other words, he's fighting his Yetzer Hara. It is the person who's fighting with his, and he has that struggle. And he's trying. And he's trying hard. But his Yetzer Hara is so big and so strong. And Hashem sees what's going on, so he helps him. So that's HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ezer. V'ha'ezer hi ha'ara shemeir Hashem al nefesh elikis. Now, what is the nature of this help? So here, scholars of Tanya have been studying this line here. Now, exactly how does this work, this help? Does it mean that actually it's a help that's coming outside of him? Which when you read the text of the Gemara, Il Mola HaKadosh Baruch Hu Oizrei En Yachalai, the reading of the text, if you just translate it literally, it sounds like this person is trying his best, and Hashem sees him trying his best, so Hashem is going to actually help him. In other words, something is going to come upon him from outside of him, a special assistance that Hashem is going to give him. That's one way of learning. But the line that the Alter Rebbe that I just read says that the help is an extra shine of light, of godly light in his nefesh elokis. Now that could be understood as the Beinoni, when he works within himself, Hashem programmed his godly soul that if he digs deeper in himself, he's going to find that light to overcome his Yetzer Hara. So if you understand it that way, it doesn't mean that there's some kind of a push that he's getting from outside of him, but there's a program. He's tuning into that programming that's in him, that Oir Hashem, that there's a godly light that's in his godly soul, that when he gets that point, that deep point into himself, then the animal soul doesn't stand a chance. Now we find in the 12th chapter, he also says 2 points of how the Beinoni is successful to overcome his impulses. One is that the brain rules over the heart, which can even be perhaps a secular explanation. But then he says, and also the godly soul is like light fighting darkness. And when light fights darkness, the light is not fighting. When you bring light into a place of darkness, automatically the darkness is gone. And the more light you bring into a place of darkness, the more the lesser the darkness is. Ma'ad oyer pushes away Ma'ad oyer gashmi doich harbe min ha'choshech. In physical light and darkness, it's not like there is the light is in a battle, that there's a struggle. Like he says there in chapter 11, Shema'at oyer gashmi doich harbe min ha'choshech shenitchem men me'ela v'me'ela. So it seems to be over here, that's what he's pushing at. He doesn't mention at all in chapter 13 about the power of the mind over the heart. He doesn't mention it at all. He's saying about the light. And therefore, it seems to me more inclined to say that we mean it's not this HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not necessarily where Hashem is sending him some kind of an extra reinforcement coming from Hashem directly to him, and something that is outside of him is now giving more weight to his position, which is possible. And we do have Maimora Chazal that sometimes this could happen. But it seems to me over here that he's saying to the Beinoni, when you see that struggle, think deeper about your godly soul. Do something to bring out your godly soul. The Gemara says, if you see a Yetzer Hara, your low-life Yetzer Hara, the words of the Gemara is an interesting adjective. Your low-life Yetzer Hara is tugging at you. Take him to the Beis HaMedrash and study Torah. So the light of Torah is going to weaken him. So in terms of Kabbalah and Chassidus, what this means is, find the light in your neshama, Oir Hashem. Now, if he psychologically, and I'm talking about holy psychology, he's tuning into his nefesh alakis, into his godly soul, and he's standing there, and he sees and senses the light, then the nefesh Abraham is going to shake off of him. And he mentions exactly, like he refers to what we learned in the previous chapter, the advantage of light over darkness. So what we see over here is, which I think is so clear. It is said over in the name of the Barditchever that he said that if he said it's not fair. The whole place which we were put in is not fair. So Barditchever put it this way. He said, Hashem, you put us in a world of flesh. And when we see physicality, and we sense it, and it's what is bigger and stronger rules. But you told us to read the Torah, and Gemara, and Chassidus. In the books, you tell us about the world to come, and about the godly soul. That's in the books. But where did you put us? In a physical world. So look, that's the way we are. If you would have done it the other way around, if you would put us in a spiritual world, you'd put us in Elam Haba, a spiritual world, and in the books you would write about sin. Would any of us sin? So is it fair that you did it the other way around? You put us in a world of sin, and in the books you write about the good and the holy. Okay, so it's a good argument. But bottom line, the question is, what about, how do we handle it? So, the reality, if we understand this, what he's saying here in Tanya is that both are true here in this world. Because we're in this world with animal soul and a godly soul. And our closest impulse is our animal soul. Because we're physical. So that's closer to us. It is more immediate. And therefore, it seems more powerful. So the attraction to the physical seems more powerful. And to the observer or us observing ourselves and saying, well, my attraction to the physical, to the material, that's powerful, that's strong. What he's saying over here is that if you are able to tune into the godly soul and see the light, if you see the light, the darkness will automatically fall away. And we're capable of tuning into that light. In the state of mind of being in that light, in the Eir Hashem, so when there's light, there's no darkness. The hard part is, how do we tune into that nefesh elikis to the degree that we sense the light and automatically the darkness falls away? How, when I was reading this Tanya and the Maimer Chazal that he brings, that without the help of Hashem, he would not be able to overcome his Yetzer Hara, his evil inclination. I'm reminded something that is one of the steps of AA, of Alcoholics Anonymous, which I've heard from people who've been by this. And one of the steps, I think it's step 2, is to recognize and to accept a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. The first step is to recognize how he's powerless. The second step is that there's a power greater than ourselves that can restore us. I was reminded of that over here because he's saying that the Beinoni freezes. There's a certain point where the godly soul and animal soul are voicing their opinions, the two judges in him, and he needs some power to sway in one direction. Without that extra power, he will not be able to sway it. So that could be, as I said before, it depends how you learn Pshat in Hashem's help. Is it coming from the outside? And it could be somebody at a certain stage really feels that he's totally powerless and lost, and he's davening to Hashem, Hashem, help me get out of my trouble. And certainly someone who's in an AA setting feels totally powerless, and he needs that. But even the Beinoni who's on a higher level also has that to a degree. He's recognized that Kadosh Baruch Hu Oizrei, that he needs the help of Hashem. According to the second interpretation of what does it mean, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Oizrei, that it means that he digs into himself and he finds the Oid Hashem that is in his nefesh elikis, in his godly soul. He finds that light. So it's not mamish, it's the setting of a AA, but it is also a recognition that if I don't find my godly soul, I'm stuck. Right? He does feel that powerlessness. Even this Beinoni, who he needs the help of that inner light, without that extra effort on his part to find that Oir Hashem, he's still going to be frozen and stuck. One of the issues that's raised over here in chapter 13 is how he portrays the Beinoni overcoming his Yetzer Hara. So he portrays this happens because he has the assistance of Hashem, or assistance of the light of Hashem that's in his nefesh elikis. But he doesn't mention at all in chapter 13 the intellectual capability of mind over heart, of a mind over emotion, of brain over heart. And this is something that the scholars of Tanya have been debating. The Rebbe once spoke about this as well. And what we have over here really is two Beinoni personalities. We have the Beinoni personality of chapter 12 and the Beinoni personality of chapter 13. There's two types of Beinonis. The Beinoni personality of chapter 12, he's a full-fledged Beinoni. He's a healthy Beinoni. And over there, he has a clear head and a clear heart, and he doesn't get stuck and frozen. So what is how does he get his clear head? So over there, he described the Beinoni as someone who has times during the day where he is inside and outside on fire with Hashem, doing what's right. That he has a passion for Hashem. He has this passion for the spiritual. At that moment, he's like a tzaddik. At that moment, he has no inclination for physical pleasures and certainly not for sinful thoughts. The Beinoni in chapter 12, he has his impulses after davening, when he leaves the shul, when he leaves the Beis HaMedrash, and he goes to the streets, he suddenly feels attracted. And he said clearly in chapter 12, so how does he rule over his impulses? So it says in chapter 12, because there's still residue and the effect of his davening, since he davened with a fire, and there are moments during the day when he's on fire for Yiddishkeit, when he's really enjoying, enthusiastic, and feels his Yiddishkeit deep inside. So even if he's at work or he's in the street, there still lingers on the effects of his passion. And we spoke about it. You have to have a passion, some passion for Yiddishkeit. Find something in Yiddishkeit that you enjoy, that you feel for. A nigun. And afterwards, it's going to make it easier for you to control your impulses. So the Beinoni, the ideal Beinoni is the Beinoni of chapter 12, who his head is clear and healthy, because he davens and he learns with a fire and a passion. So therefore, after davening, when he's done with it and he goes out there in the world, he is in control. The mind rules over the heart. What about the Beinoni in chapter 13? He is different. The Beinoni in chapter 13, he's struggling. And he is not in a state of mind where he davened that day, or maybe doesn't have a fire in his heart. So therefore, it's not so natural for him that the mind rules over the heart. His head is not so pure and clear, but he is very committed. And when he sees how powerless he is, he turns to Hashem. And Hashem sees his struggle, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu Oizrei, and Hashem helps him. So the moral of the story over here is there are different types of Beinoni. And actually, it's clear there are many levels of Beinoni. Like he said in the chapters 10 and 11, when we spoke about the tzaddik and the rasha, there are thousands of Beinoni tzaddikim, levels of tzaddik, and there's so many levels of rasha. There's also many levels of a Beinoni. There was a Beinoni we spoke in another class. We spoke about the Beinoni who's a Beinoni because of Kabbalah's oil, which is brought in the Torah of the Tzemach Tzedek, where he may not even be such a deep person, But he's a soldier and he's committed. Then we have now the contrast between the Beinoni of chapter 12 and chapter 13. And as I said many times, the point over here is that we should, when we learn Tanya, even if it speaks about a high level of a Beinoni personality, because the reality is that the complete realization of the Beinoni in our lives is very far from most of us. But the study of the Beinoni and the striving to be a Beinoni at a given moment, that is very close to us. That the Beinoni is the model, because the Beinoni is expected to do what's right now, even there's turmoil in my heart and mind. And that is what we learn from the Beinoni, where the Beinoni is perfect in behavior, but there's so much turmoil in his heart. So therefore, right now in front of me, there's a decision I have to make, but I have turmoil in my heart. So we're telling him, you have turmoil in your heart? So the Beinoni has turned it up. It doesn't act out on those impulses. And that's the lesson that we have to learn from. Have a good night.